You get the picture? Immediately recuse or resign. Joining me right now with her thoughts on all of it, Republican strategist Ford O'Connell and Democratic strategist John Rowley. Good to see you guys. Ford, you heard Karl Rove earlier. He's saying, look, this is just more political theater. What's your thought on that? Is that really what's behind this?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. This is a smokescreen for the Democrats to hide their true intentions, which is to upend the Trump presidency at every turn using all means necessary. Look, they don't really care about Russian contacts. They care only because he won the election and he had a good night on Tuesday night. And for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to run out there and go berserk and say that he committed perjury and he should resign, they're barking up the wrong tree. But guess what? They're eating up the news cycle.
They are indeed. By the way, we heard earlier from Trump there in Virginia. He's going to be speaking momentarily, so we'll be watching for that aboard that Navy warship. But he said he has full faith in Jeff Sessions. So he's standing behind him. You know, it seems to be a little bit of an issue of semantics as well here. You think back to that questioning that Al Franken did with Jeff Sessions, Mr. Rowley, and basically, you know, he said if there's any evidence that affiliates the Trump campaign with Russia, if they communicated, what would you do? And he said, look, I'm not aware of anything like that. And he said, I've been called a surrogate at a time or two, and I haven't had any communications with the Russians. But what he seems to have meant is he didn't have any political communications with the Russians. Obviously, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, you do have meetings, do you not, John, with ambassadors from many different countries, including Russia.
Listen to the tape. This is a skilled lawyer after years. He totally misled the Senate committee, and the law is pretty clear about.
By the way, this is Donald Trump that the viewer is looking at. I just want to show them. He's shaking hands there as he makes his way through over to the podium there. We're going to be taking his speech live as soon as that begins. Let's continue to stay on this picture. Well, it looks like he may speak quite soon here, so we'll watch for this. I mean, certainly a big news day here. He's coming off an incredible speech, and you got to wonder about the timing of this story regarding Jeff Sessions, given the success that he saw there with that speech and the momentum behind him, the media even saying how wonderful it all was. But John, let me go back to you as we wait here for the president to talk about the importance of defense spending and get back to this issue. You're saying Jeff Sessions is a skilled lawyer and he knew what he was doing and he answered it in such a way?
Absolutely.
I'd argue, you know, if he's a skilled lawyer, he wouldn't have answered it that way, though. He would have actually added the word political communications in there.
Well, that's why it's clear that he was lying. And it doesn't matter what day it happened. It is a blockbuster of news that the sitting attorney general has essentially lied in his
John, he didn't
process.
lie. I'm a lawyer.
Absolutely
Let me tell you.
Listen to the tape. Listen to the tape.
He did not lie.
He to a Senate committee.
He said, wait a minute.
Hands down.
He's talking about.
Listen to the tape.
Okay, go ahead, Ford. But we did just listen to the tape.
John, he said that he never met with. He said that he never met with Russian officials to discuss issues of the campaign. You have to prove intent. Yes, it is. That is part of that testimony.
No, it's not.
That is absolutely part of that testimony. That is not true.
He did not clarify that.
Yes, he did.
I think what's important here, let me jump in, is that this was within the context of the campaign. The question was about contacts between the campaign and the Russians. And you can see through this question that that was the motivation behind it.
Right.
So Jeff Sessions answers it saying that, you know, no, he hasn't been doing that. Now, we have since learned he had one meeting that was really quite impromptu. It was at the Heritage Foundation. It wasn't really a meeting. He went there and spoke, and the Russian ambassador happened to be there along with a bunch of other people and came up and said hi after. So that doesn't really qualify. He also had another meeting in his office. So that could be seen as more something.
It's a pretty big omission, Trish.
But let's not forget, he's doing his job, right? If you're on the Armed Services Committee, you got to meet with these ambassadors.
Not only is he doing his job, he met with 30 ambassadors from April to November of 2016. Joe Manchin met with the Russian ambassador. And if I was going to pull off something sinister and clandestine, why would I meet with the Russians in my own office? That would be absolutely insane.
That's a very good point, Ford. I mean, you at least want to be clever about it and maybe do it in some back room and not out there in the open on your staff calendar. Go ahead.
Trish, for hundreds of years, American leaders of all parties have come together, especially when it came to foreign policy. And I think it's time to put the country ahead of your party. And we're already seeing that to some degree in terms of what Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Michael Painter, George W. Bush's House ethics person has already come out and said this is the sort of thing that sends you to jail. Not to mention Darrell Issa is calling for an investigation.
Well, I mean, for goodness sake, though, John Rowley, you're getting ahead of yourself.
Right side of the
right,
Russian
you're getting ahead of yourself. Because right now, we don't know anything.
Exactly.
All we know is that he met with the Russian ambassador, which, by the way, in that capacity, you meet with tons of ambassadors. So that's all we know. He said on the record that he had no conversations about the Trump campaign with the Russian ambassador. Now, if it turns out he did, if it turns out that there were people that were, actively trying to recruit the Russians to help in the campaign, you got yourself a whole other story. But we don't have that yet. And so you're jumping forward in a way that is a lot of conjecture, and I would argue is fairly dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if the FBI finds that out to be the case, then Attorney General Sessions should recuse himself. Let me say something to the Republicans out there who have to need to see the bigger picture and understand the political game that the Democrats are trying to play here. Grow a backbone and hold the line, because let me tell you something. This is purely a political game, and when you give in on the news, when you give the Democrats an inch, they're going to take them out. They don't care about the Russians. They don't care about anything. They want Trump out, period.
I've got a message to everybody. Let's put country ahead of party, and I think that's what some of these Republicans are already doing. But you're not putting country ahead of party, John.
You're putting party ahead of country.
Listen, John, I guess what's sad about all this is it feels as though there are Democrats out there that are wishing that this is true. They want this to be true. They want to find some kind of smoking gun that somehow links Donald Trump and his campaign to the Russians, in a way that I don't think is very healthy for this country right now. He is the new president of the United States, someone who deserves a little respect and a chance. Here he is speaking there in Newport News, Virginia. Republican strategist Ford O'Connell and Democratic strategist John Rowley are still with me there as we watch Donald Trump working the crowd a little bit on his way out there. I guess perhaps one of the hardest things for military members and their families has been just sort of the perception of disdain that you got from the White House during the Obama years, in that he really wanted to shrink the military and make us less active throughout the world. Now you're seeing the antithesis of this with this president there going aboard a Navy carrier ship to talk about why we need more of these people, these sailors, why we need more equipment, why we need to provide our military with the very best resources possible. What a difference in tone, Ford.
Absolutely. Let me say this. When you say that President Obama had disdain for the military when it came to spending, you're absolutely right. It was when he began, we spent 4.6% of GDP on the military. When he left office, that was down to 3.2. And to put that in contrast, at the height of the Cold War with John Kennedy, we spent 10% of our GDP on the military. The idea is peace through strength. We have such a strong military that we're going to avoid war at all costs because everyone else is going to be afraid of us.
John Rowley, what's wrong with that?
Well, it's not the 60s or 70s or the Cold War is part of it. I mean, that's a speech was
according to you guys, with respect to Russia and hacking,
let me finish. You had your chance. Let me finish. That was a Valentine to the defense industry. I didn't hear hardly a word about veterans' health care, the VA, military families, better training.
Yeah,
it was all about ships
a lot of that.
Planes.
I mean, John, give the guy, cut him a little slack. I mean, it's one thing at a time. He has talked about veterans.
Yeah,
he has talked about military families. Were you not watching that speech the other night? Where he made that tribute to Ryan Owens and his widow was there
planes
crying.
And ships, something from the 1950s or 60s.
I mean, it's
totally
ships,
out of sync with where military spending needs to be today in the modern age.
You need intelligence that the military can provide as well.
Didn't talk about
and you
that.
need resources. You need resources. And so he's talking about upping the budget. By the way, not even bringing it back to where it was.
Not much about the veterans and people in uniform, really.
John,
we have heard a lot about that. I mean, you know, part of what you need to do as president is figure out on what your message is on a daily basis, right? Today,
and figure out where he's going to get all the money for this.
Well, no, let me say this, John, in all honesty, your point about veterans is absolutely right. We've had this issue for 30 years. Donald Trump is going to try to make headway. In my opinion, it's probably the biggest mess in Washington, D.C. But when it comes to our aircraft and providing our sailors and our airmen with everything they need, you got to understand something. Fox News has been doing reports over and over under Brett Baer about the military having to cannibalize boneyards to put parts in planes. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a naval aviator and find out that basically my plane is falling out of the sky because we didn't actually give our troops what they need.
Yeah, now, you know, we do. I mean, there's a certain level of basics, right, that we need to be providing. And to have cut military spending as much as we have at a time when, you know, our position has become so increasingly precarious in the world, it doesn't make any sense. I hear you, John, on the money. I get that $54 billion is not going to materialize out of thin air. You got to hope for economic growth, and you got to be able to make cuts in other areas. Now, this is where he's going to run into trouble. I agree, because nobody wants to see their department cut. I have a feeling that the well, you know, you look at some of those departments, and they're going to have to
transportation bill
do a whole lot more with less. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, he's also pushing a $1 trillion transportation bill and this big, quote-unquote, tax cut. I mean, the money doesn't add up. I mean, so is he going to raise taxes on somebody? I mean, he's just living in this
I think he's made it clear he's not. I mean, that's you know, he said that over and over again. And by the way, let me point out, Steve Mnuchin, our new Treasury Secretary, telling our very own Neil Cavuto that those tax cuts are happening. They're happening in August. They expected to be signed, sealed, and delivered. And you had a market that rallied more than 300 points on that news, combined with the speech we saw the night before.
Then we're headed to a $40 trillion debt.
So to talk about, you know, increased taxes, I don't think that's going to fly. He's made a promise on lower taxes. You know, this is sort of an Econ 101 issue, right? Because you want to grow the economy. But in order to grow the economy, you need policies in place that put more money in the hands of the people that are making it, and more money, frankly, in the hands of the companies that are making it as well. And so you need tax policies that will enable growth. And hopefully once you get that growth, you're going to have a bigger overall tax revenue base for it.
No, that's absolutely right. The idea is that we're going to be able to pay a lot of this through growth. And to John, to your point on the $1 trillion infrastructure investment, remember, he's talking about a hybrid public-private partnership. I definitely agree, though, overall with John. I can't believe I'm going to say this, that when it comes to our budget, Donald Trump is definitely threading a narrow needle. But you want to know what? That's what we need to do, because the idea is we have to get people back to work. And if you get more people working, we're going to actually have more revenue in the coffers.
Yeah, do you see jobless claims today at a 44-year low? Fewer people applying for unemployment benefits. That's a very good sign. I agree with both of you. You know, the budget stuff is complicated, and, you know, the money's not going to materialize out of thin air. So he is going to have to be very cautious on all of that. But I'll tell you, if you can start getting this economy going, it's going to mean a whole lot. Ford and John, good to see you guys. Thank you very much. All right, let's turn to Snap. Shares of Snap opening today at $24 a share, making the co-founder billionaires overnight. But are they ready to lead right now? And how dependent is the company itself on its founders? We're on it for you. This big IPO captivating Wall Street next.